1993 was the worst April Fool's Day in NASCAR history. How so? Because you might remember 2009 when Barack Obama signed an executive order to oust Chevrolet and Dodge from NASCAR entirely, or the time when NASCAR made the announcement that they had partnered with Google to create a self-driving car, meaning that NASCAR had officially moved past the need for race car drivers. No, none of those are the worst, because all of those dystopian jokes were just, well, jokes. Unlike 1993, when something many might have mistaken for an April Fool's joke was tragically a real-life nightmare.
Obviously, that night in itself was very emotional, very draining.
I just remember just falling over, basically, and my wife came running and said, "What is wrong?"
NRF Productions presents NASCAR's tragic 1993 April Fool's Day. When Alan Kulwicki first started this NASCAR gig, sold all of his possessions to head down to the NASCAR hub in North Carolina, many NASCAR drivers might have saw him as an April Fool's joke of a driver. Why on earth was this Northerner from Wisconsin racing against the best that the Carolinas had to offer? Alan Kulwicki was not your stereotypical Southern hick from the South. In fact, every single time he got out of the car after winning a race, he'd comb his hair. The Wisconsin native was a cleaner, more calculated driver on the racetrack. He was a mechanical engineer after all. Over the next couple years, Alan Kulwicki would become respected by his peers in the garage as someone that raced hard but not dirty. When Alan Kulwicki was racing his Hooters number 7 side by side with you, you just knew that Alan couldn't stick his MAE 318 notebook in between the two of you. Fortunately, you also knew that you weren't going to get sent into the outside wall, which was comforting to know, especially if you're claustrophobic. Alan Kulwicki crafted his skill through his incredible work ethic. Mark Martin described him as a guy that, for 15 years, 7 days a week, had total concentration. His friend, Dale Gruba, recalled Kulwicki as the guy that wasn't afraid to be uncomfortable, avoiding the temptations of chilling by the pool with a nice Coors Light, feeling good in the moment on a blistering summer day, to instead climb into his race car, probably wearing a dark suit without a cooling unit to practice. These hot afternoons prepared him for the pressure-packed 1992 Hooters 500, arguably the greatest race in NASCAR history. So maybe the suits and ties did have something to do with it. Maybe NASCAR is rigged, Illuminati confirmed. However, the thing that the people in the suites could not influence was how Kulwicki would take to the track on that afternoon. All the skills learned in the classroom and the work ethic developed in the blistering heat won him the prize he had chased for years: the NASCAR Winston Cup Series championship. Alan Kulwicki forever solidified his name in the history books, and most importantly, he did this his own way. This beloved Underbird was now seen as the guy who could rule the NASCAR roost not just in 1992, but many, many years into the future. April 1st, 1993 was a day that would change NASCAR forever. Cliche statement, I know, but it's true. Alan Kulwicki had just wrapped up an intimate experience at Hooters. He was mostly there just to sign autographs for his Polish Pulse, the diehard fans that found themselves aligned personally with driver number 7. This would be the calm before boarding a twin-engine turboprop Merlin Fairchild aircraft to arrive in Knoxville, Tennessee, 3 days before Round 6 of the 1993 NASCAR Winston Cup Series would take place at the Bristol Motor Speedway. This was the track that Kulwicki had circled to really make a statement in his championship defense. This was, in fact, the racetrack where Kulwicki had won 2 of his 5 victories. Mike Collier, Dale Earnhardt's pilot, recalled Kulwicki's plane being 2 miles behind them with no issues. Charles Campbell radioed into the tower that they were outside the marker to where he was cleared for landing on runway 2. They could clearly hear Alan Kulwicki's radio. 30 seconds later, they would be struck with horror by the crashing sound, grunts, and hollers from this channel. Collier told Dale Earnhardt what had happened to Alan's plane, but he couldn't fathom to tell the Hooters people who were anticipating their arrival. All 4 passengers on this great metal bird, including Alan Kulwicki, landed on a rural hillside in Blunsville, Tennessee at 9:28 p.m. And unfortunately, on that moment, we had lost 4 great people, including the 1992 NASCAR Cup Series champion. The National Transportation Safety Board determined that the plane crashed due to ice choking the engine, putting blame on the pilot for not using the plane's anti-icing and de-icing systems in time to evade such a tragic incident. As the chunks of ice went into the engine, Campbell was unable to maintain sufficient airspeed and down came the plane. The mood in Bristol, Tennessee was not one commonly felt. There were no tempers or tears of joy. All the drivers raced with heavy hearts with the loss of one of their colleagues. The King of Bristol, Darrell Waltrip, and Mark Martin, Mark the Kid Martin, considered it a tragedy that he couldn't enjoy the fruits of his labor. Alan Kulwicki's diehard sponsors were also saddened by the loss. In Dearborn, Michigan, Ford's North American Automotive Operations headquarters lowered its flags to half staff. In addition, Hooters would close all of its restaurants Friday to honor those lost in the wreckage. However, the tributes that really pulled at your heartstrings the most would be the ones at the racetrack itself. On Friday, Kulwicki's trailer circled the track in tribute to their fallen hero. Multiple drivers, crew members, and officials lined the pit road to wave goodbye. As the checkered flag was waved and as Kulwicki's hauler went up the steep banking to leave the racetrack, you could see those in the truck wiping away tears from their eyes. On Sunday, one of Alan Kulwicki's good buddies, Rusty Wallace, continued his Bristol dominance. However, he didn't let the emotions of winning a NASCAR Cup Series race forge him off of the big picture. He came into this race wanting to win it for Alan Kulwicki, which he did. And how would he celebrate? Why, by saluting the fans in the way Alan Kulwicki did throughout his racing career in the form of the Polish victory lap. The people that knew Alan Kulwicki the most recalled him as a practical joker. Even with his seriousness, he wasn't afraid to let loose from time to time on his way up the mountain to become NASCAR champion. Which is why, on April Fool's Day 1993, the entire NASCAR industry and everyone that knew Alan Kulwicki personally was stunned silent after hearing the tragedy that had happened in Blunsville, Tennessee. Touchy subject, I know, especially for an April Fool's Day video. If you want a more joking tone for this special occasion, check out some of the other April Fool's Day themed videos. Other than that, this is Nathan for NRF Productions. Life's a beach and then you drive.